This is H is for Hawk by Helen Macdonald. It was published in 2014. It won the Costa Book of the Year and it got lots of plaudits, and it turned up on those end of year favourite books lists. And I've just finished reading it now. What to say about it? It's nature writing. It's a memoir. Helen Macdonald basically tames and trains a goshawk and trains it to hunt. But it's also a memoir in the sense that she's grieving for her father, who has just died, who she was very, very close to. And she tries to, in a sense, displace her grief into training this wild creature. Goshawks, I didn't know any of this, but there's lots and lots about falconry here. Goshawks are called the ruffians of the falconry world, in that they're so hard to train, and they're big and aggressive, and they don't have the status of peregrines who were for princes, or other birds that were for ladies, or for kestrels were for knaves, as we know from Barry Hines. But goshawks were big and rough birds. She describes her grief in great detail, and at times you worry for her that she's she's losing friendships, she's losing her job. She's sitting in a darkened room with this hawk because the hawk has to get used to her, and she describes in incredible detail how she relates to this hawk, and she sees her Mabel, she calls the hawk. She sees Mabel as a dinosaur, a griffin, sat there in a perch in her darkened living room. I think she sleeps in the room where the goshawk is, so that the hawk is very, very familiar with her. The third strand of the book is her researching into the life of T.H. White, the guy who wrote The Once and Future King. White also trained a goshawk, and he wrote a book called Goz, which he was so disappointed with that he stashed it away, and it was only by chance almost that his publisher found it and wanted to publish it. This was back a generation ago. White was a schoolmaster in a boys' public school and was very tortured by his sexuality and his sadomasochistic urges, and lived a very unhappy life, and had to get away from the school and become more hermit-like. But he trained a hawk and wrote about his hawk, and Macdonald is trying to research and rehabilitate White in this book, I would say. It's a book that it's very, very, very richly written. She's a poet, Macdonald, and writes beautifully about the natural world, but it's a harsh natural world often. There's nothing cosy or sanitized about it, and particularly the kind of the sections where the hawk has killed a rabbit or a pheasant are incredibly graphic to read, and I won't read them. But one of the bits I thought was really good was when she's reflecting later in the book about her desire to grieve for her father by going into the wild, by adopting Mabel and training her. And she's thinking about this strategy, and she says, all the way home on the train I thought of Dad and the terrible mistake I had made. I'd thought that to heal my great hurt I should flee to the wild. It was what people did. The nature books I'd read told me so. So many of them had been quests inspired by grief or sadness. Some had fixed themselves to the stars of elusive animals. Some sought snow geese, others snow leopards. Others cleaved to the earth, walked trails, mountains, coasts and glens. Some sought wilderness at a distance, others closer to home. Nature in her green tranquil woods heals and soothes all afflictions, wrote John Muir. Earth has no sorrow that earth cannot heal. Now I knew this for what it was, a beguiling but dangerous lie. I was furious with myself and my own unconscious certainty that this was the cure I needed. Hands are for other human hands to hold. They should not be reserved exclusively as purchase for hawks. And the wild is not a panacea for the human soul. Too much in the air can corrode it to nothing. I really enjoyed reading this book, but I did find that I got some way through it and was almost overdosing on the rich poetic prose and all this stuff about Mabel the hawk and Macdonald's brief actually. So I did step aside and read other books as I went along, but I came back to it and finished it, and I'm finishing it now with the snow falling outside and the natural world quite prominent today. And it did also make me think, Macdonald read T.H. White's book when she was just a little girl, and it's a savage kind of book, so it was a strange book for her to be reading, but she'd been interested in falconry all her life as a result. I was thinking about what I read as a kid, and I just picked down off my bookshelf one of the earliest books I own, and it's called Out with Romany by Bramwell Evans, Romany of the BBC, published in the 1950s, I think. I'll just show it to you very briefly. It's a tangent to what I'm talking about, really. Yeah, first printed 1937. In this, Romany, who lives in a Romany caravan with his horse and his dog, he comes to visit, and the little boy who's the first person narrator of this was always looking out for Romany when he arrives in the spring, and his parents are delighted for the little boy to go down and learn from Romany and sit in his caravan and learn about the natural world. And it's in 3 parts, this lovely book. The first part is about Hotchie the hedgehog, and he learns all about hedgehogs. The second part is Smut the hare, and he learns all about hares. And the third part is Flash the fox. And I loved this as a kid. I really absorbed this, but it did make me wonder what sense I would possibly have made. I wouldn't have made any sense of T.H. White's Goz and all the things that Helen Macdonald was absorbing. So I really, really recommend this book, but you might want to read it in chunks or whatever. It's a really interesting book. Thank you. If you like this review or you got any comments, please add them to the video or tick some likes to it. Always appreciated. Thank you.